This is the Ball Talk Podcast, presented by Nachos and Analysis.
What's going on, Tiger fans? Today is May 25th, and welcome to the 16th episode of the Ball Talk Podcast, presented by Nachos and Analysis. I'm your host, Drew Archer, and let's talk some ball. Well, it was another huge weekend in Clemson, South Carolina this past weekend. Similar to the spring game weekend where you had a baseball series and the spring game going on. There was a lot of people in town, a buzz in the air, and it was the same this past weekend with the softball team hosting their second consecutive regional, as well as the men's team at Doug Kingsmore Stadium wrapping up the regular season against North Carolina. There were a lot of people. It was a lot of fun. Great weather all weekend long. It just, you hate to see, like, obviously we play for this moment to get into postseason, but beautiful weather, big crowds, exciting games out on the field, and that's about it for that's definitely it for the regular season. Now we'll talk a little bit of regional and super regional talk here with the baseball team here in a little bit, but sadly it's coming to an end, the final regular season baseball series, and this was, at least from my vantage point in the Cajun Cafe, this game, this crowd was like a South Carolina series. I did not go Thursday night, but I was in Clemson Friday and Saturday for the final two games of the series, and tickets were so hard to come by in the Cajun Cafe, which they always are. But someone went to the extent of calling Dabo to call the folks at the Cajun Cafe to see, hey, can we get this person up here? So this past weekend, it was to the point where Dabo had to get involved to get someone a seat up in the Cajun Cafe. I was telling somebody that story the other day, and they're like, well, was Dabo able to successfully get them up there? I was like, the guy was sitting there, so evidently Dabo has the pull for the Cajun Cafe. But regardless, it was a big weekend, an exciting weekend for both the softball and baseball team. Clemson won their regional. Like we said, they hosted their second consecutive regional. They defeated UNCG and then played Auburn 3 games to wrap up the regional there. Tigers went 1-2 of 3 against the Fighting War Eagles of Auburn. Clemson advances to the Norman Super Regional. We'll get into it here in a little bit, but the Tigers have a tall task ahead of them, traveling out to Oklahoma to face the number one seed, the number one ranked team, the back-to-back national champion. This is the second consecutive year the Tigers have traveled to Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, for a super regional. Last year, their first super regional appearance, they traveled and faced Oklahoma State. But a big series ahead of the Tigers this weekend. And we got a guest coming in here later to discuss the Oklahoma side of things. And I'll admit, I really only pay attention to Clemson softball, South Carolina a little bit, just because they're our rival and kind of who's around Clemson and who they're playing, either coming up or just past. I didn't know much about Oklahoma, but when you start digging and looking at some of the stats and what they're leading the nation in, which, if you haven't looked, they lead the nation in a lot of categories. They're a very good team here. So big series for the Tigers. On the baseball side of things, the Tigers sweep UNC to wrap up the regular season. It's their third consecutive conference series sweep and seventh consecutive ACC series win. Who would have thought? I believe they started like 2-8 maybe in conference play. Get swept by Wake Forest. Tigers have not looked back since getting swept by Wake Forest. The Tigers and the Demon Deacons odds-on favorite to win the ACC tournament, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But a huge turnaround for this program, something that Eric Bakich had preached. The team kept their head down. They were confident in what they had there. I went back and was looking at some notes from our very first episode of the Ball Talk podcast, episode 1. If you did not listen, we had Coach Eric Bakich on, and he told me that team that he took in Michigan to the College World Series, this Clemson team, top to bottom, more talented than that team. Now, back in January or early February, whenever this conversation was he and I had, I mean, sure, that's good to hear. Did I believe it? No. That's off-season coach speak. You're trying to hype your team up. But this team, the last month and a half, 2 months, has been playing like a team that could find its way in the College World Series. And I say find, but this is a team that will earn its way to the College World Series. They dug themselves a really big hole to start the season out. But week by week, game by game, on the backs of midweek victories against solid opponents, this team has clawed its way back. And right now, my honest opinion, I don't think that this ACC tournament means anything when it comes to Clemson being a national top 8 seed or not. I think right now, whether Clemson wins a single game, and I'm recording this on Wednesday, this is 6-10, so the Tigers are about to play their first game against Virginia Tech, which on paper it's meaningless. We'll get into that a little bit, but to Eric Bakich and this team, this is not a meaningless game. But I think the Tigers have secured themselves a top 8 national seed, which we're talking about hosting regionals and super regionals, which is exciting. It's been a while since the Tigers have hosted. I remember being out there in the stands. I could be totally wrong, but I feel like the last time the Tigers hosted a regional was Seth Beer's final game, and that was a sad one. I remember seeing him hugging his teammates, crying out on the field. It's hard to believe it's been that long since he's gone, and it's hard to believe that it's been that long since this great storied program has hosted a regional. But that's where we're at. That's the conversations we're having right now, regardless of really what happens in the ACC tournament. On that note, this team is not taking the tournament lightly. When you're on a streak like this, you want to keep that momentum going. You want to keep the routine going. You don't want to get out of rhythm. So this team is going to play this just like it's a weekend series. The days may be a little off. You're not playing consecutive days here in the first round or so, but they're going to do their best to keep that momentum going, keep the routine, keep the structure. The Tigers are the 3rd seed overall in the ACC tournament. A lot of people were asking, well, why aren't they the 2nd seed? They have the second best record in the ACC. It was broken up by division. So the 1st and 2nd seed go to the Atlantic and Coastal leaders there. So that is why Clemson did not get the 2 seed. However, they are the 3 seed paired with number 6 Boston College and number 10 Virginia Tech. Tuesday, Boston College beat Virginia Tech 11-7 virtually on paper, like we said, making Wednesday's game against the Hokies pointless. But that is not the mindset of this coaching staff. But before we get into any more baseball, let's talk a little bit of Clemson softball. All right, Clemson softball. Well, obviously we did not do an episode last week. My busy life, my busy schedule kind of got in the way of that. Do apologize for that. But we did put our thoughts out there on Nachos and Analysis Twitter account with how we thought this was going to go. And I knew Auburn was going to be a tough opponent to face, especially the way that this team kind of finished down the stretch I think Clemson kind of built their resume up on teams that were lesser than, not as competitive, not as skilled, not as talented. And when you saw the Tigers face some equal to or better competition, they struggled and even lost. And Auburn has beaten some solid teams in the SEC. It was a tough conference as far as softball this season. They had wins against Alabama, LSU, and quite a few other ranked opponents throughout the year. So considering where this team kind of finished the regular season, the quick outing in the ACC tournament, there were moments of doubt that I thought that the Tigers might not make it out of this regional. But ultimately, I kind of settled on Clemson getting out, Clemson winning, beating Auburn. But I knew, and at least in my prediction, I threw it out there, that it was going to take that seventh game that was an optional game if needed based on what happened in the losers bracket. And basically, the Tigers had to play a 3-game series with Auburn. But game one, it had to excite Clemson fans after the lack of offense, the lack of productivity at the plate as of late. Tigers beat UNCG in 5 innings, 17-2. I remember I was driving Friday when this game was going on to Clemson for the baseball game. Happened to turn it on right as I believe William Qualkenbush was calling the game, describing they had scored 7 runs in the first inning. And after I heard that, I'm like, all right, this team, Auburn's going to be a step up from UNCG, but this team has got what it takes offensively to get out of this regional. And that proved true. Game 2, they even made it look easy against Auburn. They faced them and won 7-0, not giving up a single run. That put Auburn in the losers bracket. Auburn had to play an additional game later that evening, get up early, play Clemson the next day. You thought the Tigers had an advantage in that game just with the rest advantage that they had over Auburn. But Auburn won that game 2-5 behind their stellar pitcher. And I think that is ultimately what cost Auburn here in the final game this weekend. They rode that horse till the wheels fell off. She did an excellent job, and this is poor podcasting here. I can't remember her name to save my life, but that Auburn pitcher did an excellent job, and a combination of that and how much rest and versus how many games they've played in a short period of time comparatively to Clemson, I think that's what ultimately did. The Tigers win the final game to win the regional 5-1. Somebody, I can't remember, I might have been on one of the message boards on Tiger Illustrated, said they were at the game, and even after Auburn won that first game on Sunday, there wasn't a whole lot of celebration. They said from the dugout and the way they quickly celebrated and got back going, it wasn't quite like we got more business to do. It was more like exhaustion, which favored the Tigers there in that 5-1 victory in the final game. So what is next? A tall task for this team. The Tigers travel to Norman, Oklahoma to face top seed Oklahoma. Not a good draw for this Clemson team. This team earned the spot they got. Could you argue they should be a couple seedings up and not be the 16th seed paired with Oklahoma? Sure you can. But the fact that Clemson is as low as it is how it performed down the stretch against a little bit better competition and basically losing that final series of the regular season. So the Tigers have the reigning back-to-back national champions, Oklahoma Sooners, this Friday, Saturday, and hopefully Sunday. If there is a 2-game sweep in this series, it's definitely not going to be Clemson. So that's why I say hopefully there. The fact that there is a Sunday game is very promising for this Clemson team because that means they've won one. This Oklahoma team is talented top to bottom. Their pitching staff, current ERA as a team, 0.88. Now, if you remember back probably midway through the season, maybe even a little bit later, this Clemson pitching staff was under 1 ERA, but not anymore. This Oklahoma team has one loss on the season to Baylor. I believe it was February 19th, their 9th game of the year. This team doesn't know what losing is. This team has been in the spotlight. They've won the big games. They're a number 1 seed. And is Clemson going to be an easy out? No. But this is a tall task for this Clemson team. So big time softball coming up this weekend. That's all I'm going to really touch on that. We do have a guest today. It's been a little while since we've had a guest on the show. Terry Price of OU Softball Home Run Tracker joins the show. He reached out about kind of talking some Clemson, Oklahoma softball, and it just so happened he reached out at just the right time as far as my schedule goes and when I get these episodes out. So he was gracious with his time to come on. He was actually doing the interview live from the ballpark there in Atlanta, catching a Braves-Dodgers game. So I haven't listened back to the audio yet. He did forget his headphones. So at least on my end during the interview, the audio sounded pretty good. So if not, bear with us. But it was a good interview. He is very knowledgeable, a huge Oklahoma softball fan. So without further ado, here's Terry Price. All right, joining me today is the man behind OU Softball Home Run Tracker, Terry Price. Thank you for joining me today, Terry.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate it. I look forward to it.
And you're joining me from Atlanta at a baseball game. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have a workshop tomorrow in Atlanta, so we came in today, and we are at the Braves-Dodgers game. Starts here in about 45 minutes.
Awesome. Well, hopefully the Braves will pull one out here. So before we get into everything, first off, tell me about the Twitter account and kind of how you got started with that.
So back actually in 21, OU starts off, and they're on this home run tear, and everybody's talking about breaking the records, and there's all these accounts that you know Oklahoma, just like Clemson, big football school, and all kinds of accounts that are dedicated to football, but there wasn't a lot of accounts that were just dedicated to softball. And so I got this idea, you know what, we're going to track these home runs, track the stats. I'm a math guy. And so I kind of converted my account over, dedicated it to Oklahoma softball and tracking home runs for the Sooners. And obviously 21 was an amazing season. Last year with Jocelyn breaking the record was another amazing season as far as home runs. And it's been fun.
So Oklahoma is the number 1 seed for a reason. They're strong top to bottom from the plate to their pitching staff with the ERA of 0.88. What can Clemson fans expect to see out of this really good Oklahoma squad?
Well, I mean, the OU team is just, I don't know. It's just Patty Gasso's done an amazing job of putting something together that you don't see on literally any other team. Something I've talked about on my Twitter account is how OU has 10 hitters that are batting over 325 and have over 90 at bats. And you look at the other teams in the final 16 and the super regionals, and I think there's one with 5, several with 4, a lot with 2. Bama doesn't have any. And I think that Clemson's kind of on par as far as pitching is concerned. I mean, they've got 3 great pitchers. I'm not sure there's 2 other teams like Clemson and Oklahoma that have 3 pitchers they could go to that have the stats that they do. And so it's going to be, I think, a great series. I think Clemson's a little bit underrated. Maybe their schedule they played's not been as good as what some of these other teams, and I think they were kind of downgraded a little bit because of that. But you take that Florida State series away, and Clemson had an amazing season. They had an amazing season regardless, but getting swept by Florida State, I think, hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, the last week or so, regular season didn't help them out either. As a Clemson fan, I wish they would have ended up with the 15 seed, considering what happened last weekend. They would have been hosting in Clemson. But the Sooners have not lost since mid-February, went undefeated in conference play. Who were some of the key players in this Oklahoma squad that the Tigers need to keep an eye out for?
So, the batting order is going to start off with Jada Coleman and then Tiare Jennings. I'm sure every Clemson fan is very familiar with those 2. They're going to get the Sooners started. I think both those players were in the top 10 of National Player of the Year finalists. But some other players outside of that, transfer Haley Lee has been huge for OU at the plate. She's basically played the DH, caught a little bit for the Sooners this year, but she's hit some bombs. Another player in that lineup is our catcher, Kinsey Hansen. She's an amazing behind the plate, does a good job with those pitchers, and she's going to be big for the Sooners. Somebody who you might see come off the bench in a pitch hit situation is also another one of our catchers, Sophia Nugent. I mean, she's hit some absolute bombs this year. I don't know if she's hit a home run that didn't go over the bleachers in the outfield. It's got a really great bat, and so Clemson will probably see her, and that may be a name they're not as familiar with.
Knowing this Oklahoma squad, what areas does Clemson need to exploit to make this a competitive series with the Sooners?
Well, I mean, they're going to have to really control the Sooners at the plate. I think they have the pitching to go head-to-head with this lineup, but it's going to be 1 through 9. And then, like I said, there's going to be some girls that come in and pitch hit that can do an amazing job. If they can find a way to slow OU down at the plate, then they're going to have a chance to win the game. If they allow OU to kind of get on some of those momentums that they get on, I mean, once they get – there's times where they just get a couple of hits, score 1 run, the team gets excited, and that excitement just builds and it turns into, 4, 5, 6 run inning. If they can keep that from happening, it'll be a good series this weekend.
Well, I have you. I can't not ask. Clemson's former defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, is now over there, the head coach for the football team. What's the vibe around the fan base there with him heading into year 2 of the football program?
Well, honestly, after last season, there is some skepticism, but I think overall, OU fans know what Brent's capable of doing with the defense. They not only had a great recruiting class this year, they had a great recruiting class when Brent came in just after being there a month or so. And he has also done an amazing job in the portal, especially on the defensive side. I think OU fans expect the defense to improve. If we see an improved defense, I think we'll see improvements in the win column. And I think overall there's a lot of excitement around what's going on with OU football, and especially with the move to the SEC. I think it can only go up from last season, obviously.
Well, Terry, tell our listeners how they can follow you on Twitter and what kind of content you'll be putting out this weekend with the Super Regionals.
So they can follow me on Twitter at HR Tracker Sports, and I will be tweeting out some, maybe on Friday, maybe not as much during the game because I will be at the game. Saturday, I'll be at the house. probably be tweeting a little bit more. I tweet a lot of stats, try to tweet a lot about what's going on during the game, and we'll try to provide some good information for everyone that's following about both teams. I want to say I'm really impressed with what Clemson has done in such a short time. And I think most OU fans really respect that. I think the Clemson fans that come to the game, they'll see how much OU fans appreciate good plays. If Clemson has a good play, they're going to get an ovation from the OU fans. It's not going to be boos and cheers like you might see at some places. I think they really do respect what Clemson's done in such a short time.
Absolutely. And looking at your Twitter page today, I noticed you got quite the tailgate setup that you do for a lot of the softball games. What all you have in that whole tailgate setup? It looked like a smoker, a grill.
So we got a smoker, a griddle. I set up a tent. We've got our TV going. Unless it's a 3-game series, I don't know that we'll do the tailgate this weekend. If we play on Sunday, I will set up, but I don't fly back in from Atlanta till 10 o'clock. I just won't have time to set up on Friday. And like I said, I won't be able to be there Saturday. But if there's a Sunday game, we'll set up. We'll be going. And we usually cooking burgers, some pulled pork, giving out free sandwiches. And if there's any Clemson fans coming, I hope they stop by. We're right across from the stadium. You can't miss us. They're welcome to come join us. Maybe watch the start of another super regional game and get something to eat.
Well, Terry, I appreciate you taking the time, especially being at a Braves game. Look forward to following your content this weekend, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. All right, thanks to Terry for joining the show. Really appreciate his insight and makes you that much more excited for this softball series. This is a big time series, and in this Clemson softball program's few short years, we've seen quite a few big time series here. And this is I don't know, this might be the toughest task yet. The girls got a lot to prove, and it should be a intense series. Before we move on, though, we can't forget our poll of the week. Our poll of the week is posted each week on Twitter. So if you don't follow Nachos Analysis on Twitter, do so. It's where we post this each week. Try to get a lot of conversation going on. And you, the listener that gets in on Twitter, we'll discuss some of your comments on here. And it's not exactly from this poll question, but a similar tweet, this related, sparked a lot of controversy, and we'll get into some of those comments here in a little bit. But this week's poll of the week is, what is your Clemson versus Oklahoma Super Regional prediction? I saw a similar poll posted earlier this week by an account that has a Oklahoma affiliation. That one was nowhere near the same results as what we have here. I believe 2% of the voters said that Clemson would win that series. Numbers are a little bit different here. We got some orange covered glasses looking at this question, but the options were Oklahoma win the series 2 games to nothing. Oklahoma taking the series to 3 and winning 2-1, or Clemson winning the series 2-0, or Clemson winning the series 2-1. As expected, Clemson winning the series 2-0 was the smallest percentage here, with 9% of the vote. Really, I don't know. Kind of surprised by 9% of the people getting in on this poll, thinking that Clemson can sweep this series. But hey, I'm an optimist person. I don't know if I'm that optimistic. The rest of the answers here. The winning poll answer is Oklahoma wins in 2 games, followed by Clemson winning 2 games to 1, then Oklahoma 2-1. So we got a lot of optimistic fans here. Let's look at some of the things that people had to say here. This is the similar question that I posed on Twitter today, and it rubbed some people the wrong way, but not to be dramatic or anything, but does Clemson softball stand a chance this weekend against Oklahoma? And we got a lot of interaction on this. Some short and simple answers like nope, and that's okay. It was a good year. And hey, if that's the case, I agree. It's still a solid year for this softball program. We got Johnny Carrots checking in. Johnny says, if we can figure out how to score more runs than them, they won't be able to stop us. Otherwise, nope. I respond back with the math is definitely mathing on that one. Key to winning softball, score more runs than the opponent. Jason Priester, friend of the show, friend of the program, friend of Nachos and Analysis. He gets in and says, puncher's chance, ? A lot of comments here basically saying if Clemson wants to win this series, they have to play the best they possibly can, and Oklahoma has to make some mistakes. We got some quote tweets here. Katie Ravtar, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, Katie, said, did the 1980 USA hockey team have a chance on paper? ? Okay, cool. Let's go shock the world. Bring this type of energy or don't bring any at all. # why not us? Katie, I'm a Clemson fan. I want this Tigers team to win as much as the next person. I also am allowed to be a fan and throw out a question because there were some people that were a little upset with me even asking that question. I'm optimistic, but I'm also realistic. This Oklahoma team leads the nation in a lot of categories. Their lineup, top to bottom, better than any other team in the country. I think it's a realistic question to ask, but is that going to stop me from pulling for the Tigers? Am I going to watch every single game? Absolutely. I'm going to be glued to the TV starting 2 o'clock on Friday. So, do I think Clemson softball wins this series? No, I do not. But as a fan, like these people have pointed out, crazier things have happened, and I'll be rooting for those crazier things. I just do not see it happening. All right, before we get into Clemson baseball, we got to talk about our loyal sponsor from the very beginning, and that is Pump Monkey Septic Service. Pump Monkey Septic Service is owned and operated by Clemson alumni Alan Powell, and he services the upstate area. You don't want to be in a bind. You don't want to be misinformed when you have a septic tank issue. That's just a mess that no one wants to deal with. So, when you need your septic tank pumped, if you think it's time and want to get it checked out and get an estimate, trust the loyal and trustworthy folks at Pump Monkey Septic Service. Alan does a great job with the social media, the graphics, the logo. I'm actually wearing the Pump Monkey shirt right now, right there. Catch him out on Facebook and Instagram. I don't know if his merch is for sale yet, but all really cool merch. But Pump Monkey Septic Service, reach out to them. They're the most loyal septic service here in the upstate. Going to do right by you. Give them a phone call, shoot them a text at 864-710-2211. Again, 864-710-2211. When the dump's funky, call Pump Monkey. All right, we're going to keep this week's baseball segment short and sweet because, quite frankly, the tournament's about to start and I want to sit down and watch it. I think we're going to have a lot more to talk about next week when it comes to regionals. Really, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have regionals back in Clemson, South Carolina. It's been far too long. But we're going to keep it short and sweet. We're going to talk briefly about this UNC series and a little bit about the tournament. Next week, we'll do a full breakdown of the seeding and who Clemson is hosting in their regional. And hopefully, like I'm thinking, our super regional. The Tigers do so well to win their regional. But this team has not slowed down. It wins its 7th consecutive ACC series. They defeat the Tar Heels this weekend. It's their 3rd consecutive sweep in conference play. This team is on fire. They're the hottest team in the country right now. And that goes back to what I talked about in the opening there. On paper, this game tonight for me, but yesterday for those of you listening as this drops on Thursday, this game against Virginia Tech, it may not mean anything on paper, but it means a lot to this staff and this team. Because if you overlook games like this, you get out of your rhythm, you look ahead. That's not what teams that are on a streak like what Clemson is on right now do. That's not how they think. This team is going to take this game seriously just like it does every other midweek game. And that's kind of how I'm looking at this game as well. But I'm getting ahead of myself here with the ACC tournament. Tigers win 3 games there this weekend at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. The final regular season series at Clemson. Like I said, it was packed. There were a ton of people out there. It was hard to get tickets. Friday, or excuse me, I got my days mixed up here on my chart. This was a Thursday through Saturday series. Thursday, the Tigers win 14-7. Saturday, 5-4. In what was a crazy ending. I've heard some people throw out some other terms. I'm going to call it Twilight Sky. The Tigers dropped 3 pop flies in, was it the bottom of the 8th, top of the 8th or top of the 9th, to allow a run to score to make that game a little bit closer than you would have liked. I knew something was up when Wright came running from past third base for a pop fly and ended up literally almost all the way to home plate. Then you have another one there in the infield, and then another one out in the outfield. And you're like, what is going on here? And the players were just losing it. Coach Backett speaked on it after the game. He said it was something that Coach Leggett had kind of pointed out to him, that for about a 15 to 20 minute period every single day when the cloud structure is just right with the twilight sky, that bluish gray color, you just flat out lose the ball. Where I sit out in right field, half the time I can't ever see the ball. But speaking with some people who sit behind home plate, they said from the time that it went off his bat, they couldn't see the ball either. Which, if you're out there in the outfield and you ain't got a clue where the ball's going, I've never been hit with a ball quite like that. I mean, I've been hit by pitches before, but to be out there looking for a pop fly and have no clue where it's at could potentially hit you. But the Tigers rebound, get out of that game, win 5-4. Then they wrap up the series on Saturday with a 3-1 victory. It felt nice. Tigers in the regular season in a big way. I talked a few episodes back. I felt like this team had turned a corner, but I was hesitant to get my hopes up. This team means business. This isn't just a flash in the pan. They've strung together wins, series victories, sweeps over the last 2 months and went from unranked cellar of the ACC in the basement to about to get a top 8 national seed to the NCAA tournament. The work that this team and this coaching staff has done, the faith they've had in each other, the fun they've been having. This team is so fun to watch. They're having fun while they're winning. And I think that to steal from Dabo, the best is yet to come. The regular season may be over, but Wednesday, postseason begins. Tigers got two definite games in Virginia Tech and Boston College. Boston College defeated Virginia Tech on Tuesday, making the Boston College game on Friday the game to win. This is not how Eric Bakich wants to hear it. This is not something he's going to say. The Tigers can afford to lose to Virginia Tech. Do you want that? Absolutely not. All right, but that is the way it is. It's virtually a meaningless game. The game that means everything, the game against Boston College. Whoever wins that game advances from pool play to play in the semifinals with a chance to play for the ACC championship this weekend. So a big weekend for Clemson baseball. Like I said, this team doesn't have anything left to prove, in my opinion, to the selection committee. I think they've wrapped up a national seed to host all the way through super regionals. But I'm excited to see the damage they can do because if they play in this tournament like they have these last 2 months, watch out, Wake Forest. The Tigers could have taken 2 of those 3 games against Wake Forest before this streak got going. They didn't. But with the way this team is playing right now, we could be talking ACC championship. Coach Monty Lee did it in his first year. If I'm not mistaken, Coach Leggett did in his first year. I'm all in favor of Coach Bakich keeping with tradition. So, this time next week, we will be talking more postseason baseball. We'll review the super regionals out in Norman, Oklahoma. But regardless, it is a big weekend for Clemson on the diamond, whether we're talking baseball or softball. But Tiger fans, enjoy the ACC tournament. Enjoy the super regionals. Join me next week, and we'll talk some ball. Peace.